All right. This session is always better in person, and I hope that all of you who I can see, kind of, at least the names, I hope I see you in person someday when I deliver this presentation. But for now, we're going to just have to do it virtually. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. Let me know when you can see it. We'll start with that. Currently, it's just showing a website. Can you see it? Yeah. Okay, and I'm turning the chat off, by the way. So Tara, you got the chat. I'll focus on the presentation, and I'm gonna go ahead and actually, here we go, start my PowerPoint. Let me know if you can see it. Thumbs up, yes? Okay, awesome. So as Tara mentioned, my name is Asif Rahmani. I'm from Chicago, and we don't have snow just yet, but I hear that it's coming. What I'm here to talk about is contextual microlearning, a topic that is very, very near and dear to my heart. I do see a few folks over here that I know. For example, Caroline, I see Caroline, she knows pretty well what I do. I see Dave as well. Hey, Dave. Okay, so I'm sure I know more people here, but I'm gonna try to focus on the presentation here. The concept of microlearning is not new, as we all know, right? But when I was doing this presentation the last time I was in Orlando doing this thing, one person stood up and said, well, wait a minute, you're saying you keep on talking about traditional microlearning. Microlearning cannot be that old, right? It's a few years or maybe a decade. I'm going to show you, and I'll provide the proof here also in the presentation of how old the concept of microlearning is. It is not new. It is not new, and that's the reason I'm calling it traditional microlearning. And the concept of contextual microlearning, even that is not new anymore in the sense of the way we think of new, which is a few years, but it has not caught on as widely as I would like it to, as others who share the same perspective as me like it to. So I want to show you exactly what contextual microlearning is, why I think it's much better than regular traditional microlearning, and then we'll go from there. Now, by the way, you should be seeing the full screen presenter view, correct, Tara? Okay, just want to make sure before I get going. Alrighty. So my name is Asif Rahmani once again. I am from Chicago. I have a presentation link over here, bit.ly link, bit.ly/Asif conference. I'll be providing this later also. I do lots of presentations on microlearning, but also on learning in general, learning in the flow of work. I talk about some specific Microsoft concepts, done that for many, many years. And all of my presentations, as well as recording of many of the presentations, are located at that place. So feel free, go there, fill out a quick form over there. You'll see all the presentations. Okay. Alrighty, let's get going over here. I'm gonna move, here we go. Just moving the Zoom bar a little bit. Okay, so a quick introduction of me. Asif Rahmani from Chicago. As I mentioned, I run a company. I'm the founder and CEO of a company called Visual SP. And myself as an individual, as well as our company Visual SP, we're completely focused on this concept of contextual microlearning. That's all we do, and that's all we talk about. And the things I'll be talking about are, like I said, very close to me. And something that our company helps many, many other companies with the same concept over here. Now, Visual SP is a product, and I'll probably be able to show you the product itself also and how it's actually realized, the actual implementation of it. But my slide decks also will have lots of content within that. Now, this is not a Microsoft crowd, obviously, but some of these things that I have here in my intro are Microsoft specific. So I'm going to skip this. Basically, I've been at this for a very, very long time, speaking at conferences, talking to people about this concept, writing books. Some of the books that I've written have been very technical in nature, but the stuff that I write recently is very, very learning specific, specific to psychology of users and how to get them to do what you want them to do, etc. Let me see if I can use a laser pointer here. Yeah, so this is my LinkedIn profile QR code and got my email address and web address. Please feel free, email me, go to our website, check it out, see if we can help you. As I mentioned, what I'm about to talk about right now is what we do as a company as well. So if the concepts do relate to you, let us know. All right, let's do this. The agenda, I'm going to be talking about the history of microlearning, because as I mentioned, microlearning is not as new as many of us might think. Limitations of microlearning. So what is it that we can do better with microlearning? Why is context specificity, is that the right word? Why is the context necessary for microlearning? What does it provide? And that's going to be the contextual microlearning concept that I'll be talking about. There is a game that I usually play when I have people in person that I can see. I have people raise their hands or shout out the answer, but we won't be able to do that here, but we'll do the best we can. Maybe I'll ask the question, maybe I'll just give you the answers, we'll see. Then I'll be talking about the phases of employee learning need. So there's the concept of contextual microlearning, but also macro learning and traditional microlearning. Where does it all fit in? What are the different phases that an employee goes through? So I'll be talking about that. And then last, but definitely not the least, all these things that you do are not worth anything, in my humble opinion, unless you can measure the ROI, right? The return on investment is something that you're going to ask yourself. Your boss is going to ask you, hey, what is it doing for us? How is it saving us money or making us money or saving us time? So we'll be talking about exactly some specific formulas that I've been using, that our company has been using to measure, excuse me, learning effectiveness. All righty. I'm going to start off very broad here. First, let's talk about the goal of learning. Excuse me. You know, when you think about learning, it's absorbing information, and you're absorbing information to enhance your understanding of something, whether it's playing chess or riding a bicycle or using a specific software or playing table tennis, which is something that, that I do. And over the period of time, your learning enhances your understanding of something, right? Learning can definitely be fun as long as you understand what's in it for you. So please keep that in mind as we go forward here. The traditional training aspect, where we put people in a room like this and teach people, it can be challenging. Many of you are instructional designers yourself, or have been in the learning space for a long time, and you know what I'm talking about. That doesn't matter if it's like the picture shows, you have people in front of you and you're teaching something, or even if it's an environment like right now, where I'm trying the best I can virtually to teach you or talk to you about some concepts. Honestly, all these things are good, but sometimes they're not as effective because there's a lot of information that's coming your way. Not everything is going to stick. That's just the truth. You know, tomorrow, a week from now, 6 months from now, a year from now, you'll be wondering, you know, there's this concept that Asif talked about, but I can't remember this specific thing. I forgot this and I forgot that. And that's just common. And that's one of the biggest challenge with traditional training. I'm sure you've seen this curve before, called the Ebbinghaus curve, right? The challenge of retention is real. How do you get information to stick in a person's mind? Do they want it to stick in their mind? And if they don't, can you force it? My humble opinion, no, you cannot force it. If they want to consume and retain the information, they will. And that does happen with us when there's something specific that happens and it sticks with us in our brain. And then there's other information that just comes and goes. And this is the best Ebbinghaus curve that I've seen, where it actually gives percentages like in 20 minutes after the actual learning or training, 58% of retention remains. And then after 1 hour, 44%. Now, granted that these are general percentages, which are not always true, but you know, the day and time we live in right now with TikTok and Snapchat and everything else that my kids use these days, oh my God, it's very difficult to keep a person's attention. And these things, the same kids are coming in the workspace. And even the folks who are in the workplace right now are struggling with a lot of this information that's coming their way. So having said all that, I truly believe learning can be fun. I talked about the stuff that I like to do, like, playing chess or playing table tennis or other kind of play. Whenever the word play comes into the thing, it is still learning that's happening, and it can be fun. Same thing, I actually like learning some software that I'm interested in. I was learning Canva yesterday, for example, for the first time. I don't know why I've never learned that, but it's a pretty cool way. I'm sure many of you have, to make quick posts and other kind of graphics. And it was fun. At the same time, when you're getting trained, that is almost never fun. And you know why? Because many times, I'm not saying all the time, but many times training happens where it's a push mechanism. You're in the room or a virtual room like this, hopefully not today, hopefully you're here and you're motivated, but many times you're kind of forced by your manager saying, hey, you got to be trained in this new system, or you got to be trained in this new process, and you're not as motivated. So getting trained is difficult. Many times it's not as fun, but learning is always fun as long as you are doing it, you're in charge, and you know what's in it for you. Microlearning came about because of all these challenges, right? So a way to make things tiny, micro, and delivered in a way where it doesn't feel like getting trained, but it's more like a very quick answer that you're getting for something that you're interested in anyway, right? That's what microlearning is all about. Now, the word microlearning, the first published use of the term, you'll be surprised when I put this date in there, 1963. I didn't know that until I researched and I got into it, that a book, The Economics of Human Resources, written by Hector Correa in 1963, first mentioned the word microlearning. Can you believe that? 1963. I myself, for the last 20 years, maybe a little bit less, have been using this word. But before that, I had no idea. Now, having said the following, about microlearning, please remember that the reason things got really, really popular in the last 20 years or so is because microlearning came into the computing platform, right? So a lot of the stuff that we talk about right now is from the computer standpoint. Now, it doesn't have to be, but that's where it became popular. Microlearning existed before computers, before the internet, before any of that stuff. But it became really popular when we started thinking about a quick tip sheet, a quick video, a quick this, a quick that. So it's not new, and it is still good, and microlearning is necessary, but there are challenges. So I'm going to talk about those right now. What are the challenges of microlearning? See, at this point in time, if I had all of you in front of me, physically, I would ask you for some answers, and we could do that in chat, but we have so much to cover. I'm going to keep going through this over here. So I see two main challenges with microlearning. First one, there's no context sensitivity to the learner, okay? What I mean by that is that many times you do not have this in context of what you're looking for, so you actually go change your context and you get learned, even if it's in a micro format, and then you come back. The context changes, and I'll talk more about that a little bit later also, the context sensitivity and the context switching cost. The second thing, this information must be searched. It must be discovered. Now, I'll give you a very specific example of something that I had to go through, okay? As I mentioned before, I live in Chicago. It gets really, really cold in Chicago, and hot water, hot heater, all that stuff is a necessity, especially when you're in minus 40-degree Fahrenheit temperature. So that's a reality. Our water heater, a couple of months ago, stopped working, like completely stopped, and I had no idea what's going on. All right. Now I'm frantically trying to figure out, okay, we got to fix this thing. The winter is not here yet completely, but still I need to get this figured out. My family needs hot water, et cetera, et cetera. I called the plumber. They don't know what's going on. They told me to check a few things. Everything looked fine. I looked online, no idea. Then I called the actual manufacturer, and they told me, okay, well, go here, do this, do that. And I'm thinking, oh my God, these instructions that they're giving me are for a plumber. I can't do this. I went back to YouTube in this case. And I did some research on what they were telling me, some of the words that they were giving me. Go look for, I can't remember exactly what it was, but look for the burner, look for the sensor, clean the sensor, blah, blah, blah. I looked, I was very motivated. We didn't have hot water. I got into the water heater, shaft at the bottom, cleaned the sensor. It worked. Life was good. But that's only because I was super motivated for my family to have hot water. All right. Having said that, usually learners are not that motivated. They will not go to find that micro learning information because it's not in context. And many times they don't even know what they're looking for. Okay, so that was my story for what it's worth. Microlearning itself, great, but when you put context with microlearning, it becomes a lot better. Switching context does hurt productivity and hurts adoption of whatever it is that you're trying to get people to adopt. That's a fact, okay? So in my opinion, traditional learning, regular macro learning, microlearning, all of them requires switching that context. I have to zoom out from what I was doing, go somewhere, zoom in to what needs to be done. In my case, I was looking for some specific information, then come back and then come back to the task at hand. There's even evidence out there of people of studies saying that the context switching can cost up to 40% drop in productivity. That's a lot. Another figure that I've heard is that when you switch context, you lose an average of 15 minutes. Okay. Now, that's not saying that you actually take that long to find the information, but what happens is that you're switching context, going somewhere else, coming back, going deeper into what you're working in, and that switching costs about 15 minutes, which is quite a long time. By the way, all the research and all the figures, the stuff that I'm talking about here are all in the notes of these slides, which if you ask Tara, who's monitoring this over here, you can just ask her in the chat. She'll point you to the slide deck and you can just download it. All right, lots and lots of notes in the slide deck. So having said all that, I'm introducing contextual microlearning. Contextual microlearning, the word itself, the words are not used as much outside. This is something that I've started using for the last year or so. There are other terms like context-sensitive learning or context-sensitive microlearning that has been used, but I started using contextual microlearning, and I've spoken about that, I've written about that. There's additional articles coming in other magazines also for that. And the concept is you are bringing information, in this specific case, learning to the learner instead of learner to the learning. Yeah, hopefully that makes sense. Instead of the learner going to the learning is coming to the learner. And that's the difference. That's the power of context. I also believe that even if it's less information in context, that's a lot better than more information out of context. Okay. Many times what you're looking for is an answer. For example, okay, I'm uploading something to this library. What is the policy for naming the files? Okay, something as simple as that. Or I know I'm a salesperson. I know there's a specific sales process I'm supposed to follow, but I don't know what the sales process is. I'm not going to go to SharePoint or the file server or whatever to find that information. I need that answer now. And that's all I need. I'm not looking for a class. So less information in context, more important than more information out of context, in my humble opinion. And there's a specific formula also for how fast we should aspire to get this information to the learners, to the people who are looking for the answer. And here's the formula for that. If we're able to get information to the learner within 2 clicks and 10 seconds, you have a learner, a person who is on your side. And that's been proven out there, that if you're able to do that within 2 clicks, within 10 seconds, things stick a lot better than if it takes longer or if it takes more clicks. Okay. Now, traditionally, what has happened, and it continues to happen, is even though, let me see if I can use a pen over here, if it lets me. There we go. So we have admins who Many times in organizations, we focus on training them. Maybe you're admins yourself, you get trained, you go to classes and all. You have developers, programmers that get trained. You have executives that get whatever they want. They can get training or get someone to help them and all. But all of these people just make up this part of the organization. Let's say if it's 10,000 people in an organization, you got these 100 people or so, maybe less, who are in that category. Then you have the remaining part of the pie, all this stuff right here, happy face, that these are end users, right? So these are end users over here that are the workers. They're the paralegals, they're doctors, they're the knowledge workers, accountants. They're the people who are doing the work, but they are told, hey, you'll learn things as you do things. Now, granted, learning on the work is the best type of learning, but there has to be a support, a context-specific, proactive approach that helps them learn what they need to learn. And that doesn't usually happen, okay? That's what I'm hoping that we can change that, where we can provide support and training to end users of enterprise applications, of factories, of whatever, but at their moment of need, within the flow of their work and in context of their environment. That's very, very important. Once again, at the moment of their need, in the flow of their work and in the context of their environment. The few different delivery options that I'm going to talk about here are, number one, traditional macro learning. So macro learning, you got classes. Even what we're doing right now, virtually, I'm presenting the session, and this session presentation can be categorized as macro learning, okay? But then there's traditional micro learning, which is what I was talking about before, which still, when you're looking for information, like I was looking for that solution to my water heater problem, hey, it's going to happen and you need to do that. But then there's, of course, the concept of contextual microlearning, which is, I think, the most powerful because it's happening in the flow of work. Okay. And that learning in the flow of work sticks the best. It's the fastest, no context switching, and you get much, much better adoption. So having said that, I'm going to show you some examples from the internet, from the web, of contextual microlearning. These are in the slides, but they're animated images, so you should be able to picture exactly how these work. And then, like I was saying before, that depending on the time, let's see how we're doing on time. I think we should have enough time at the end. Then I'll show you some live examples also on my computer, showing you certain things, doing it, and so forth. So here we go. I'm sure at least some of you use a system called HubSpot. And what I'm going to show you over here is how HubSpot has provided contextual microlearning, micro support to their customers. I really like how they do this thing. In fact, we've taken inspiration from some of the stuff that they do for our own Visual Speed product as well. So within HubSpot, which happens to be a CRM, have customer service, marketing, sales, things like that. When you are in a screen, so in this case, I'm at a company screen, you click on the help button at the bottom right, and you get this knowledge base access where you can search for information, you can ask for information from support, and you see additional information right in the middle, right there, which is very specific to the page that you're looking at. So in this case, companies. Okay, so here we go. This section is specific to the things that are on this page. Another one, inline help, inline support. The things I'm showing, by the way, I'm sure you have seen all of these things or examples of these things out there. But many times what happens is we see these things, we see these what I call contextual experiences, but we don't know how to categorize them. We don't know exactly what to call them. And I'm giving it a name. In this case, it's all contextual experiences, contextual support, contextual learning. So here's another one. In this case, I'm actually filling out a form, and this actually happened, and it was asking me for all this information, and I'm wondering, okay, why are they asking me this for first name and last name where it should not be required, okay? So the designer of the form, instead of putting the information directly on the form, put a link. So when you hover over the link, sorry, it's kind of quick, it goes away. When you hover over the link, it says, okay, these resources provide us information that we need, blah, blah, blah. It's just giving me the answer of what I'm looking for. Here's another one. In this case, there's an import button in this interface, and I'm wondering how the import process would work. So I click on an inline help icon that appears right by the import, and it gives me information that I need to understand about import process. All right, a couple more examples over here. Once again, these things I want to show you, these, I'm sure you've seen some similar things like that out there as well. So this is an interactive guide, an interactive walkthrough, also called a balloon. There's various names that it goes by, but this, here we go. This balloon or this dialogue is actually pointing to something on the interface, giving me information that I need to know. It's got an animated image in this case. It's got some information, and it has a button at the bottom, right? It's giving me information that I need to know about that particular widget and nothing more. This one, similar, a dialogue that comes up, pointing to something, giving me information about that thing and nothing else, okay? Specific information in context to my environment and no more. If I asked you if you've seen these kind of walkthroughs, inline help, or the help button kind of thing that I showed you before, I'm sure you've seen these things in different places. The challenge is that we see these things on the internet, on the web, but we don't see it when we're actually doing the work in the intranet or inside our environment. And it's definitely possible to put these experiences in your environment as well. I'll show you how you can do that. We can help you with Visual SP by doing that, and other companies like ours can do that as well. But before I go into those things and also talk about the ROI and stuff, let's do this quick game. As I mentioned before, that if you were in front of me, it would be so much easier for me to just ask you these questions. But for now, just to keep the time rolling over here in the right way, I'm going to give you the answers. I'm going to be putting up specific slides with examples of macro learning or micro learning or contextual microlearning. So I'll just go ahead and explain what each one of these things are. Okay. Learning in a class. As I mentioned, what I'm doing right now, a virtual or even a physical class, if I'm presenting at a conference or I'm presenting in a class, all that stuff is deeper learning. It's macro learning, right? Finding answers to a question through search. So I go to google.com, I do a quick search, and I get my answer, but it's a micro quick answer. So obviously it's micro learning, but it is something that I have to search to get the answer. Inline icon next to a field. This I just talked about before. In this case, this actually happened also. I believe this was, yeah, this is Southwest. Early bird check-in is not refundable. Like, what does that mean exactly? Tell me more. So I clicked on inline help, and it's giving me more information. So instead of cluttering the page with all the information, it's giving me the information from the inline help icon, right? And that's obviously, as you would have guessed, contextual microlearning. Here's another one. This is a system, a CRM, a different CRM. This is Dynamics from Microsoft. When you're hovering over a specific word, timeline, it's giving information about timeline. So this is a hover over type of context specific info, which is obviously contextual microlearning. This is kind of like the example that I gave you guys over here, where I went and searched for something on YouTube because I needed that answer. I needed to know how to do certain things. So that's microlearning, not context specific, right? Okay. So one, of course, way to provide context in this case is to embed things directly within a page. And that's what's happening in here. I'm sure many of you have used SharePoint in the past, or maybe still do right now. When a video or some kind of information like that is embedded directly on the page, and like in this case, but it's relevant to the topic. So other stuff that's on the page, it's relevant to what I'm seeing in the video, then that's contextual microlearning. Okay, that's context specific. Fetching an answer to a question. So those of you who use Microsoft Teams, I have this specific scenario from Microsoft Teams. There's a widget in this case, it's the widget that we produce at Visual SP, that if you press on the widget and a dialog comes up and says, all right, what are you looking for? I'm looking for annual leave policy. That's what it's doing over here. So I type in policy, it gives me the answer, and I move forward. So that in this case is microlearning, right? Because I do have to search still in this case. Taking a course, learning management systems, learning experiences that you have. There's LCMS, I believe. There's LXPs, obviously. There's so many different acronyms these days which describe a learning system, a knowledge hub, etc. All of those are described, all of those are categorized, I should say, as macro learning, right? Because you're going in, you're deep, getting the knowledge deep inside. So that's macro. Interactive step-by-step walkthroughs. This is kind of like what I showed. Actually, I didn't show a step-by-step. The specific one I could show you in action as well. I have this running on my computer, but interactive walkthroughs which guide a person through different steps, that's context specific and categorized as contextual microlearning, okay? And last, this, I have a little bit of fun when I do this in a class or in an actual conference. It's hard to do when I cannot see you all, but this banner for announcements like that comes up in this case is saying, hey, email server is down. And this banner came up on top of ServiceNow that I was using. Imagine if your email itself is down and you need to communicate something to everybody. You can't email them. So in this case, you're communicating that with an announcement banner. But is that really learning, right? Is that really learning? I think this is more of a communication, but still it's a micro communication. And the reason I put this slide last, because it's a good segue to my next slide, which is talking about, we can take what I've been talking about, which is context specific micro learning beyond just learning itself. Okay. So we've been talking about learning in the flow of work. That's really what it is with context specific learning. But there's also support in the flow of work. There's communication in the flow of work. There's information in the flow of work. Okay. Any of these kind of things that you put for the user exactly where they are so they can experience it where they are instead of having to switch context is called contextual experiences. This is also a word, or these words that are not used as much out there yet, but I'm hoping to change that. So contextual microlearning, contextual experiences, these are important words we should think of, in my humble opinion, when we're helping the users, students, or whoever it is to get them the understanding, the information they need at their moment of need. Now, let me describe contextual experiences a little bit more. It's the right content at the right time in the right place. Okay, the right content at the right time in the right place. That's exactly what contextual experience is. And I'm going to give an example here also of something that happened with me personally and how it helped me. It even helped me with what I'm doing right now, what you're seeing right now. So let me describe that. Here's an example of contextual experience. Now, as I mentioned, I've been doing presentations. I've been teaching for a very, very long time. And I'm always trying to enhance my presentation skills and the content that I'm showing. But the fact of the matter is, like as I was telling you earlier, that I was learning Canva yesterday because my design skills are not as good. This is honestly, this is a snapshot of what my presentations used to look like. Very, very gray and white and black, and some pictures here and there if I found something that was relevant. Okay, this was an actual presentation that I used to do many, many years ago. Now my presentations look like this. Now, I can't say that I'm great at color coordination still. I think my kids are much better at that, and I have to ask them with their opinion all the time when I'm dressing and stuff like that. But having said that, I think it's a lot more colorful. It's easier to digest. It just seems more appealing, right? And this happened by accident. I had a contextual experience that actually converted one day for me to do this thing. And many of you, I'm sure, are familiar with this functionality that I'm about to talk about. It's in PowerPoint. It's called Designer. So in PowerPoint, when you go to the Home tab or the Design tab, there's a button called Designer. You see right here, top right. It comes up automatically, or it gets pressed automatically when you are putting an image on the on a slide, or you're doing something to a slide where the designer feels that, hey, you could get help by making your the design of your slide more beautiful than what it looks currently. So mine, as you saw before, were completely black and white or gray, whatever. And one day I put a picture in my slide, and automatically, boom, this designer came up and it showed me all these different examples. And my life was changed. My presentations became a lot more colorful, became a lot better. And it's because of this contextual experience that I had one day with this designer functionality. That's the kind of stuff that Microsoft and SAP and IBM, Salesforce, many of these are working on already. And what I'm saying here in this presentation is we can do these things internally for our users as well. You don't have to be dependent on those big vendors or other things to do things. Only you can do these, implement the contextual experiences, implement contextual micro support, micro learning, micro information, micro communication for your users. Alrighty. I'm sure there are a bunch of questions. I see at least a number going up in chat that there's a bunch. I will be taking them at the end, so please keep them coming. Let me talk about two last main things over here. The type of learning. When do you provide what type of learning is also very important. There's a concept of WIIFM, right? I talk about this all the time. And the reason I talk about it is because I really believe that what WIIFM, what's in it for me, is a very true concept that we should all keep in mind before delivering anything to anyone or trying to do anything. Like what I'm doing right now, if you all didn't care about this subject area, you would not be here. I cannot force you to be here. And hopefully I'm doing a good job explaining these concepts to you. So the way I think about WIIFM is there's an actual, this is just the way I think about it, radio WIIFM. It has a really good ring to it, doesn't it? This radio station is always playing in all of our minds. What's in it for me? Why am I doing this thing? Why should I do that thing? Why should I not do that thing, etc.? And there's a frequency that it has. You have a frequency, your users have a frequency, your colleagues, everybody has a frequency. And we need to, in my humble opinion, tune into that frequency, and that happens with empathy. Okay? When we empathize with our users and tune into their radio station, radio WIIFM, that's when the learning becomes sticky. That's when our goals get accomplished, because we understand what they want and we tune into their frequency. That happens in different phases of learning. The first phase was when somebody is learning something new. They just entered the company, or they just got this new process, new assignment, or new something. Learning goes up, boom, just like that, right? Straight up. Then you got digging deeper. So now they're trying to understand this a lot more because it's their job that depends on learning this thing. So they are very motivated. They're asking questions to people. Hey, Tom, hey, Sarah, can you help me with that? They're discovering things within the software or the places and so forth. Then there's this problem solving, troubleshooting that happens when things go wrong or something that they're not aware of. How do I do this? And the fourth phase, when you have to retrain yourself, you have to re-upskill, and things are changing around you, and you're like, oh my God, what's going on? I don't like this change. There are people who make their living on change management, right? I'm sure maybe some of you are change management gurus out there. There's a reason for that, because change is a constant. Change is a constant. And we all have to be ready for getting retrained, reskilled, and same thing, helping others do the same. So these phases do happen for people that we're helping as well. The question becomes, how do we help them? What are the different things we can do within those phases? So I have a graph for that I want to show you. In the beginning, as I mentioned, it's all about macro learning. Let's put them in a class, and that's fine. We do need to do that at times, like you're doing right now. You're hopefully learning some concepts from me, and you're investing this hour with me to do this thing. Then the contextual microlearning takes place, but many times it's human-centric. It's happening because I'm asking Sarah the question, I'm asking Mike this question and things like that. And I'm learning because I'm doing things myself, figuring things out. I guess it's a combination of contextual and non-contextual also, right? But then there's this valley that happens down where I get comfortable and I'm like, okay, I already know everything and I don't want to learn much more. But then things change, right? I'm experienced already in what I was doing, things change. Usually what we try to do is put them in another macro learning event, whether it's a webinar, long one, or multiple webinars, or classes, virtual, whatever, or give them a course and a learning management system, etc. But that only has incremental effect usually because things don't stick as much, in my opinion. That's when they really need this learning and information, the flow of work. And that's the ideal thing that many companies don't do, which is provide them contextual experiences. I'm not saying don't provide learning and a boost with macro, but have spaced repetition and have these kind of other contextual experiences that they can continue to learn, to experience, to understand what they're doing, why they're doing it, and get help, etc. And that's contextual microlearning. Okay. All right. Now, when macro learning does happen, as I mentioned before, there's a concept of spaced repetition that can be used for contextual microlearning. So a contextual experience, it can be configured with a specific pattern, and the pattern I'm going to show you right now, to reinforce the concepts that people have learned in the beginning or at another macro event in the middle. And that's usually after 2 days, 2 weeks, 2 months. Some people use different formulas. That's perfectly fine. That's the one. This is the one that I like, which is a macro event has happened. You want to do spaced repetition with 2 days, 2 weeks, 2 months to get the information to stick. And I'm going to show you an example of how that can happen. Right? Imagine there's a system, and in that system, salespeople, in my case, what I'm going to show is Microsoft Dynamics, but it could be Salesforce, it could be Workday, ServiceNow, SharePoint, whatever system. In that system, people are coming all the time. Okay. What I want to show you over here is what a salesperson will experience, let's say 2 days after an actual training has happened for complex sales strategies that he or she has learned. Imagine this, a banner comes up, announcement banner on top, contextual and specifically, obviously. In this case, the banner says, hey, let's take a quick 1-minute assessment of the closing complex sales course you took. Okay, this was 2 weeks ago, not 2 days, sorry about that. So that's the example that I have here, 2 weeks, okay? And then there's the start button. Watch what happens with the start button when I go next, boom, it starts blinking. So it's getting their attention, it's in the context. They can ignore the banner for a little bit because they have work to do and they'll do all that stuff, but it's right there. It's not in an email, it's not a survey, whatever, it's right there. Let's say they click on the start button, boom, the actual sales quiz comes up right there. They take this short quiz, it is micro specific, it is context specific. They take these two things, these two main concepts, they get ingrained in their brain, submit, they move on. And you in turn get the information that you needed. So analytics show you exactly who has taken the quiz, who has not taken the quiz, what grades they got, etc. So, oops, I went too fast over here. But that's the way to use spaced repetition. In this case, using an announcement banner, using dialogue in here for a survey to get people to have the information stick in their brain. And that's proven. All these things are proven. Nothing that I'm talking about here that's not. But that's how I look at contextual microlearning. Okay. Excuse me. Oh. Alrighty. Now, the topic that I want to talk about, I'm sure many of you are thinking about, how do you get all this stuff quantified? How do you tell your boss or whoever you're reporting to or your peers, if you're the boss yourself, that this is working or not working? Quantifying success, especially with contextual microlearning. So calculating ROI, whenever I think about that, usually is to prove either there's money being created, money being generated, amount of money being saved or amount of time being saved, especially in this recession or pending recession that we have these days. You want to make sure that you have very specific metrics that you can prove, right, of that one of these things is happening. Otherwise, things are just happening for whatever reason, nobody cares. That's just, that's just how it is. So what I want to show you is some formulas. One is a macro learning formula, and that's the easy one. When there's return that you can quantify of, for example, we were doing this process, it was taking 2 hours, now it's taking 1 hour, great. Investment, well, investment, the actual cost was $1,000. So now if I can quantify the benefit and I have, let's say this was $2,000 saved and investment was $1,000, well, my ROI is 200%. Wonderful, that's easy. That's macro learning. But that usually happens when you can do this within a certain period of time and prove that this actually happened. Contextual microlearning, a lot more difficult. Now, this formula, it works for microlearning and contextual microlearning, both, okay? So hang with me here, it's gonna get a little complicated. Number of hours saved in productivity, the different microlearning assets you've made available times 15 minutes divided by 60 minutes per hour. Now 15 minutes because, as I mentioned before, usually the context switching that happens takes 15 minutes of downtime when you're looking for an answer. That's the reason for that. Money saved in productivity, that's taking that number of hours saved times $26. $26 specifically, I'm based in USA, so average hourly rate for a person doing this kind of a support job or helping users, training, all that stuff, comes out to be about $26 per hour on average. This, of course, will differ for you. I know a lot of you are from different countries. I'm sure you can find that from labor data and just plug that in, okay? So that's what it is in a nutshell. Now I'm going to show you an example of this thing in action. Let's say microlearning assets accessed in 1 month, is 5,000. Typical employee or 1,000 employee organization. Number of hours saved in productivities. If you take 5,000 times 15 divided by 60, you got 1,250 hours. That's the number of hours saved in productivity. Money saved in productivity, taking the same formula, 1,250 times 26, 32,500. So what this is doing is it's taking the actual usage. Okay, so this is not the benefit in this case because it is happening on a continuous basis. You have to remember this is not an event one time. It's a continuous contextual microlearning. And when something is continuous, you have to look at it on a continuous basis also. In fact, what I want to show you in the next slide is how you can have a dashboard that can show the continuous process. So having that continuous process that's always there, if you have a dashboard, this is something that we do with Visual SP when we supply to our partners or to our clients. We have this dashboard which shows how many items are being viewed in terms of microlearning assets, right? How many hours are being saved, like as of today, how much savings in productivity. So all that information is right there. It's very fluid in nature, very transparent. The admins, the executives see that, and you know exactly what's happening. Okay. Alrighty, let's see how we're doing on time first of all, because I do want to show you. Okay, we got a few minutes. What I want to show you is, let's see, discard. Okay, I want to show you a couple of different things over here on my desktop here, and then we'd love to take some questions. Okay, so an example of what I've been showing here, and then I'll provide the link again to my presentation. And by the way, this is our company site, visualsp.com, if you wanted to go and find out more about the things that I've been talking about. Let's see. Let me, sorry, struggling here a little bit because I have to switch the desktop. Share. Okay. So hopefully now you can see the desktop here. Let's say I have a system like this, right? And in this system, I want to provide contextual experiences. This is a CRM that for my salespeople here. So notice here that on this CRM, I have a link that says medic sales process. This link, in this case, was put in using our system called Visual SP. This is not baked in to the actual environment. It's an actual link that was put in as a contextual microlearning or micro support information in here. So when a user clicks on this thing, they see the sales process that they're supposed to follow. The context did not change. The information came to them right there in their context where they can see the information, they can learn more. And if they click on that, then they get more information outside. So that's a link in this case, overlaid up top of the system, in this case using Visual SP, that guides me as a user for my answer. Another thing over here, inline help icon. So I got inline help icon here, I got inline help icon here, here. I'm hovering over and it's giving me information about those things, right? All overlaid using Visual SP in this case. If I click on forecast category, now it's giving me more information about what that is. So these are the kind of contextual experiences that we do, that we implement as a company. And this is what I advise clients on, that you want to make things super simple for users. So the information is right there. Inline help icon, links. Here's another link called context support. I click on this. If I click on the take me there, this could take me to the service desk or whatever it is that I need. Everything is right there for me as a user. Another example, let's say I'm looking at my accounts. Once again, I'm a salesperson here, but I'm coming here for the first time. It can onboard me using a interactive guided walkthrough. So the first thing that comes up is a message from our CEO, from the company. Okay. I watch this, I say next, give me information now about how I can use the system. So in this case, it's telling me, okay, you can quickly create records by using the plus button. I didn't press it, it pressed it automatically for me. Next, it's giving me information about, okay, this is a left navigation bar. Great. And more. Okay, so this is an interactive walkthrough that comes up, tells me automatically what I need to know. Or as I was telling you about, an announcement bar. I have an example of that as well. Let's say I'm not able to get to people in time about a very important meeting that's coming up. So I use a system like Visual SP for contextual micro communication to put up a announcement bar on top saying, hey, there's an announcement, there's a all hands meeting that's coming up on this date. Click the learn more button, which is right here, to get more information. This is hard to miss. People cannot miss this. Same thing, I showed the example in the slide deck about a class or reinforcement of a class information. In this case, I click on learn more and I get more information. Once again, context has not changed and I'm getting information right here within the context. Some people think, putting all this information like these announcement bars or inline help or walkthrough and things like that, it's hard, but it's not if you have the right software or if you have the right developers to do it. Our software, of course, does not require developers. It's it's no code. In fact, I'll just quickly show you that if I wanted to make a new walkthrough, I just go into the software in Visual SP, say that I'm looking to make a walkthrough. And in the walkthrough builder, I would go ahead and select an element. Let's do the whole thing. And here I'm going to say, this is a nav bar, navigation. And I'll say, let's go ahead and put a border around it. And just by doing that, oh, actually, I should have put this on the right. 1 second. All right. Now, just by doing that over here, I have one step right there showing navigation. I can schedule this so it can happen whenever I want it to happen, whoever I want it to happen to. I'll do one quick other step over here, select the top thing over here, saying this is the top bar. So quick navigation, top nav, and I'll go ahead and highlight this one. So now if I do sorry, I'm doing it really fast because of time over here, but here's the first step. Here's the navigation. Next, in this case, it's showing me the navigation bar and it's got this highlighted, right? So very, very quick to be able to make these things happen. Same thing for the inline help that I've over here. For example, this is leads. If I showed you in here how this is created, this is the one. So inline help, all in the system over here. I can select an element. In this case, I have this element. I can move this around. No code required. Put it exactly where I want it to be. I can even change the color of that inline help. And just like that, when I do a preview, I can see that now when someone hovers over it, they'll see the information. And where's this information located? Well, also the information is right here. A lead is not a contact. So things like this, very easy to do. In our case, of course, doing it from within the system, Visual SP system. If you feel brave enough, you want to do it programmatically, you could do that as well. And there's other software also that lets you do the same thing. But these contextual experiences are coming everywhere. So they're happening. And I would very, very strongly advise to use a company like ours, or use a company or yourself to provide these experiences to your people, because it's, in my opinion, very, very effective. Providing learning and support within the flow of work is exactly where things are headed. Lastly, contextual microlearning, I believe, once again, much more effective than traditional microlearning. You want to go beyond just microlearning, but you want to provide any kind of information within the flow of work. And please continuously measure the effectiveness, because if you don't measure it, you can't prove it. If you can't prove it, you can't get funding for it. And funding is very important for all that stuff to happen. Here's information about me once again. I'll leave this up over here. Once again, my name is Asif Rahmani. My email address, website, and where my slide deck is located. Lots and lots of notes in every slide that I've been talking about. See right here. So you can get all that stuff if you just download the slide. All right, Tara, any questions for the last few minutes?
Excellent. Before we get into our Q&A, thank you so much, Asif. This is really great. If anyone wants to do the little reaction, the little clap emoji to show how you enjoyed the presentation, feel free. And again, I'm Tara with EduFlow. So listening to your presentation, I was thinking a lot about how I might add in, or like ways that I could add into our trainings, specific little help pieces. So I think there's a lot you can take from just what sort of contextual moments do people really struggle with, and where I could add that in for our Academy learners as well. I added the
Wonderful.
links just above there, and there were a few questions that came up during your presentation. And if you do have additional questions, feel free to drop those in the chat. Lots of thank yous in the chat, so we really appreciate you being here. One of the biggest questions that we had in the chat was the definition overall of what is microlearning and how is it different from macro learning. A few things that were mentioned were versus like deep learning, shallow learning, and is microlearning sometimes like misunderstood? So that sort of conceptual, we had a really good conversation in the chat. It was great.
Oh, that's wonderful. Yeah, as you know, because you're in the industry as well, Tara, that the definitions sometimes are subjective to who you're talking to. In my humble opinion, currently, micro means 2 minutes or less in terms of if it's a video. And as I was saying before, 2 clicks or less to get to what you want and to get the learning, and 10 seconds or less if it's not a video. You want to keep it as micro as possible and look at the trends out there. What are these same folks doing? They're on Facebook, they're on Instagram, they're on Snapchat, they're TikTok and all that stuff. And look at these trends to where they're consuming information outside, and follow the same trends inside within the company, is my humble opinion. Because then it becomes seamless, it becomes normal, it becomes, all right, yeah, I was doing this over there, now I'm doing it here. Information is sinking in.
Excellent. Yes, I definitely was thinking about the recall piece of it too, that graph that you shared initially of how much time later do you need to recall the information. That's really great. Another question was specifically about CML, and curious to hear more about how you apply that to instructional design, specifically aside from maybe just using embed links, if you have any ideas or concepts to speak to that.
Yeah. So CML, contextual microlearning. I love that. Someone already put the acronym on there. Yeah. There are 2 ways, right? One, and actually I showed both of the ways. One is the embeddedness of information, when you're embedding something directly on the page, but making it very context specific. And that embeddedness can be text, images, animated images, videos, or any other kind of information that's hopefully visual in nature, that's in context and not too far visually from the person's perspective. And remember, a person is looking at things from usually, well, especially in English speaking countries, you got the top left and like that over here. So it needs to be in that peripheral view for them. That's the embeddedness of it. The second thing, what I was showing before regarding the overlays, is overlay on top of an information which feels like it's embedded. For example, this looks like it's embedded, but it's not. It's an actual overlay on top of it. Kind of like if you've ever used the HoloLens from Microsoft, and I've used that at a conference, this is exactly what it is, augmented reality in a way. It's overlaid on top. So you want to overlay things or you want to embed things. Those are the two main ways of getting information directly in the view of the learner or the person. Yeah.
Awesome. Another question similar to that was about if the techniques for contextual microlearning require coding, or is there a program that can be used? I know you were showing Visual SP a lot, so you kind of answered this a little bit already, but kind of an overall thought to that.
It's hard for vendors like ours, obviously, to not be biased with our own product. Visual SP obviously is our baby, is what we do, but the concept itself can be used two different ways. One is, yes, you get a vendor to implement it like ours. It's not free, but it's very reasonable in my humble opinion. The second way, there are actual libraries that are available from GitHub. If you're familiar with GitHub, GitHub has these downloadable ones called Hopscotch library, and there's another one out there too. You just download that and you implement it, but that does require code, okay, to make that happen. Now, there is a third way, but that requires a different platform. If you're on WordPress, for example, WordPress has specific plugins that you can download to make things like this happen contextually, inline help, banners, and so forth. There's lots of plugins for that. But when you get into deeper enterprise applications, like the one I was talking about, like Microsoft Dynamics or Salesforce or ServiceNow, there are no plugins that I'm aware of. There's still companies like ours that sell plugins like the ones to make that happen. So that's where you have to do programmatically, make things happen.
Excellent. Thanks so much. And then I think the last question we'll have time for is specifically about the sources of things. There was a question about the source of the concept of the learner should not click more than twice and more than 10 seconds. And then also a question about the ROI formulas that you shared, if there was a specific source that you used.
Sure. So I'll go with one and one. The 2 clicks, 10 seconds, it is on the slide deck. You can just go there. When you download it, it's in the notes. The formulas that we've been talking about, the macro learning formula is out there. You can Google it. You'll find the macro learning formula. The micro learning one is the one that we have worked with our customers to make happen. So that's not a published one that you're going to find in a study. That's one from Visual SP because there had been no contextual microlearning formula. So we had to make it happen working with our customers over many, many years. Okay.
Excellent. Thank you so much.
Yeah, absolutely. And like I was saying before, there's lots and lots of notes with all these things over here. So if you do download the slide deck, you're going to get all that stuff. Tara, I give you guys the PowerPoint. It's not even just a PDF, so you get the whole thing. Feel free, use it. I don't call this stealing. I call it, using other people's content and building on top of it. If you build something more on top of it, feel free to share back with me. I love hearing from folks like yourselves as well. And yeah, thanks so much for having me. I know we're running out of time here, but this has been an excellent time.
Absolutely. I really appreciate the collaborative nature. I feel like this line of work, a lot of us are really interested in collaboration and helping each other out. So really appreciate it. Again, I'm Tara with EduFlow. We have some courses on instructional design, learning experience design, and just a bunch of different things on EduFlow Academy. So I put the link up there. A bunch of them are free, and then we have some with partners that you might need to pay a little bit for, but we like to keep the costs really low. And we were really happy to have you, Asif, here to share about Visual SP. And yeah, thank you so much. We'll have a recording of this that we'll share out. So definitely look out for that via email. And I hope you all have a wonderful day.
Thank you all. Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye.